My goodness. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope my microphone isn't horrible. I've raised the gain a little bit, but I'm not sure what the result will be. Let's hope it's good. Thank you to everyone. Last evening, we do have, I'm not sure if it's on our YouTube channel, but we do have a Twitter account where we kind of try and announce our live streaming sessions. And but I mean, we have no regular pattern. We're just kind of doing guerrilla podcasts here and there, so we have very few viewers. But last evening there were quite a few viewers and also a lot of likes, so thank you for that. I will never solicit, obviously, a subscribe. And obviously those likes disappeared because, as is normal, YouTube does shadow bomb us and takes away those likes for whatever reason. But hey, we're not here for likes, are we? That would kind of be a stupid reason for doing this podcast. So what we're going to do is last night we kind of took on this issue, which is a detour from a detour within a detour within a detour. Anyone who's watched this podcast knows that we're kind of moving all over the place, but I don't think it doesn't worry me, because the machine breaks down. It has ruptures, it breaks down, it destroys its limits, and then it starts whirling up again and creates dust and smoke, and its limits are expanded. So, kind of in a sort of rhizomatic way, we can move all over the place. And as we all know from yesterday, this whole issue popped up of the last work of Gilles Deleuze being the Grandeur of Marx. So last evening, besides, I'm sure, all of the stupid stuff I said, we did look over an article, an interview in French from French Marxists and then people that knew and worked with Deleuze, and then saw in the first part that in Deleuze's operas by himself, Marx was extremely peripheral, and especially his relation with Hegel, as we know, who was Deleuze's philosophical enemy, his conceptual persona of the enemy, or whatever it may be. So for Deleuze himself, Marx is always very, very peripheral. Then we said, but however, we all know that when Deleuze wrote, he was looking for people to write with, so he would escape the self, the I, and then he would become with someone else. Famous example, we all know that, Guattari, and they would write together, and the resulting work was not Gilles Deleuze, it was Deleuze and Guattari. So the work cannot be purely attributed to neither one or the other. And Deleuze has always maintained, even concerning Marx, that we have wildly different opinions on Marx. I mean, it should be obvious to everyone that Deleuze was very reserved, anti-militant, but Pierre-Félix Guattari was a wild man, a militant. Guattari was all over the place, huh? If you read the biography, and that directly quotes Gilles Deleuze, Deleuze would write like something, and then we'd go over to the clinic where Guattari was working. He would leave in the text, and Guattari was like, I don't want to do this shit. I want to do like schizo flux shit. I don't want to sit here with all this discipline and this philosophical stuff. I just want to throw it all out there. I have, so many ideas. And then Deleuze at a certain point would lock, I don't know how, well, maybe it's a metaphor, Pierre Félix would lock, Deleuze would leave him in his room for 3 days and say, look, I wrote these pages, you take them, you correct them, you rewrite them, and that's how this works. That's how we create Deleuze Guattari, and where thoughts don't belong one to the other, and there's only one way to do it. Deleuze would write a transcript and he'd give it to Guattari, and he would say, look, take this and do what you want with it. And then Guattari would come back and do all kinds of wild shit. He'd give it back to Deleuze, and Deleuze would take that and take a week and try and distill that into like very serious, in a very more organized philosophical sense. So a lot of the relation to Karl Marx through Deleuze is going to be through Guattari, and that's an important point, because what I'm doing here is we have this, obviously, this person who accused me of all kinds of stuff, etc. But he sent us a video, which is from FMK Beograd, and I'm not going to put this video on, but let me write the link right here, because I'm not saying you should watch it, but if you're interested in this idea, then you absolutely should watch it. And so what I'm going to do is put the link in the description, but to make it a little bit simpler, what we're going to do is refer ourselves. This is the channel on YouTube, is FMK Beograd, FMK Beograd. I actually did not know this in the beginning, and it's kind of a learning institution in Belgrade, in Serbia, that is dedicated to learning and culture, etc., and I am going to profit for the moment to just shout them out really quickly. Be patient, but I'm telling directly to FMK Beograd right now. Veliki pozdrav za FMK. Mnogo volim I poštujem vaš rad. Uvek uživam u vašim emisijama. Poštovanje. So we've been accused of being pro-Russian, whatever, but and nothing to hide there. I'm just saying a big shout out. I respect your work, and I do know that channel. So if you go to FMK Beograd, just go to the videos and do a search for I've already lost the link. The link is called A Midnight Book of Communism. A Midnight Book of Communism. A speech given by an English author whose name is Nicholas Thorburn, who teaches at the University Thorburn of Manchester. So it's about an hour long, and it is once again, like, really seriously, FMK Beograd. Life is not easy in Belgrade and Serbia. On the contrary, it's very, very difficult. So really, really hats up, off, up, whatever, for these guys that are sponsoring and doing these kinds of things at the same time. That doesn't mean I have to agree with the content, but I would highly recommend is following that channel. So I'll put the link up, but if you just, you guys are more YouTube savvy than I, you just have to do, the channel is FMK Beograd, and then you can just put in A Midnight Book or Thorburn or whatever, and the video will pop out. And if you watch it, yeah, I have. For me, there's absolutely nothing new there. I mean, he's written a new book right now, and hats off to him. Good job. This is a few months ago, I think, this interview. Obviously, he's doing publicity for his new book. He claims, as others have before, he's bringing up this whole issue of the Grandeur of Karl Marx being possibly being Deleuze's last work, because he's absolutely intellectually honest. He's saying there's no real proof for it, essentially, and we're going to get really quickly into the proof he cites and try and analyze that. And but in the end, he's just saying, he's talking about fabulation and the fact that if it would have been what could have been, and therefore, you can, and I agree 100%. I say it like I'm a lazy intellectual, according to our critics. Maybe I say things in a simple way. Maybe I should be burned at the stake because I watch archaeological programs on Joe Rogan, but he's saying exactly the same thing I'm saying. If you want to believe that truly, good for you. If that works for you, you live better. If you work better, and you want to believe that 100%. But at the same time, like I said yesterday, our role here is that we can't believe everything that anyone says, about Deleuze. If tomorrow we're going to have a new one, and Deleuze and his secret relation with Elon Musk, who sustained the imminence on Mars, and we have to look into the context of everything. We have to understand the context, the dates, the timelines, and then we have to make informed decisions. Is it worth my time to follow this, read a 300-page book, and conclude that yes, indeed, I believe? Because here there's no concrete proof, because there's not one written page of this book, There's absolutely zero concrete proof, so it's a question of faith. So in a questions of faith, you decide what you want to do. I'm only saying make an informed decision. So that's why I'm going to spend this evening's episode. We're going to look a little bit into Nicholas Thorburn, but it's very easy. I mean, he's a good guy. He does convincing for me, but he seems to be passionate about it. He wrote a book about it. I mean, good for you, bro. I'm 100% with you, if you want to do that. At the same time, we are going to have to look a little bit at reality at the same time, and just not accept blindly what people are telling us, because the only concrete thing he mentions in the beginning of this discourse will be an essay they claim in 1993, and it's much more complicated than that, by Didier Eribon. Then we will have, as cited by our grand critic Allier, and we can, if we start to look into the lives and histories of these people, we are not criticizing them, but we will see a pattern which may or may not, I can't decide, that's up to you. These are just questions of decisions and faith. Clearly show kind of this pseudo Marxian matrix where people are going to be biased. That's my point here. That's the whole point of everything. So if we just go right here, let's see if I can update. This is, according to, I wouldn't say Thorburn, because he's not making claims. I mean, in my opinion, he's intellectually honest, but his proposal is that, according to an essay in 1993, we forgot, of course, we have to get into this, our friend Tony Negri, because Tony Negri is a big part of this whole puzzle, Tony Negri. But we're going to start with Didier Eribon, because that is the proof that he cites without demonstrating anything, saying that in 1993, let's do this here. Okay, so 1993, according to Didier Eribon, Deleuze is working on the greatness. Let's go full English here. The greatness of Karl. No. If anyone looks at our thumbnail, notice that Karl is getting tired and losing weight in the jungle, and his hair is getting like really frizzy, and I'm worried for him. So the greatness of Karl Marx. There we go. Joseph Engels, who gives a fuck? No one cites Joseph Engels because Engels had a huge role, but no, I'm intellectually lazy, so anything I say is obviously horrible. Of Karl Marx. Wow. To English, let's go with Marx. So, same thing. Let's do a timeline here. Karl Marx. Deleuze, apparently in 1993, has completed the first chapter, according to some, but he has stated in an interview with Didier Eribon in 1993, saying, and we're going to look at the article itself, amongst other things, that his last work will be on Karl Marx. However, at the same time, this is kind of what I sustain, is that 1995 is the death of Deleuze by suicide, as we all know. As everyone mentions, even Thoburn, that in Deleuze's best friend Felix Guattari died in 1992. As Deleuze has said on record, he was devastated. I mean, he was destroyed. He was lung cancer, tuberculosis, tied to a machine, and that is important, and we're going to see why as soon as we get to this article by Didier Eribon. So, the death of Deleuze. However, in 2001, we have the publication of Deleuze's last work, which is in English is called Immanence, a Life. This was completed in 1995. So, like I said, we're going to find no absolute answer, but we have to use logic and reason and ask ourselves, in 1993, Deleuze, in the horrific physical conditions that he was in, was writing on Karl Marx, but we have nothing, absolutely zero, not a note, not a page, nothing. We know for a fact, because it's published, that the last work of Deleuze was called Immanence, a Life, which was finished briefly before his death and published in 2001. So, let's get to the interesting part. What to believe here? And I repeat, in the end, there's going to be no concrete answer, but I think anyone should reasonably be able to deduct the facts from this. So, if I can dig it up, we are going to go and take a direct look of this article by Didier Eribon. But first off, what we're going to do is take a look, because I repeat, context, you have to know who is writing about whom, no? If Slavoj Žižek is writing about Hegel, obviously it's going to be different than a Deleuze writing about Hegel, than another person writing about Hegel, no? Žižek has his motives for embracing Hegel. Deleuze has his motives for rejecting Hegel. And that comes through context, life, goals, etc., etc. And so you have to empirically look at things and make the best decision you can. So, very quickly, Didier Eribon. Let's go and see who wrote the real smoking gun. The first person to state that, we'll get into Tony Negri, and that's going to be even more confusing, but Didier Eribon was born in 1953 in Rennes, and he was a social writer and philosopher, French. He wrote mainly between the 80s and 90s for a newspaper, the Nouvel Observateur, the New Observer, and we're going to look into that newspaper, which has a lot of cases and a lot of problems and a lot of lawsuits also involving our friend Didier Eribon for incorrect behavior and other problems, and I will dig these are facts, so this is not opinion, guys. Very well known for his defense of homosexuals. Good for you, I'm with you. Worked mainly in universities most of his life, no surprise there. And let's look at the books that he has written. He has written in 1989 a book regarding Michel Foucault. Then Mythology, Science, and Politics. Once again, Michel Foucault, probably tied, obviously, to his defense of homosexual rights, and 100% with him on that. Interventions on the gay question. About Jean Genet, another essay on the theory of sexuality. Obviously, this goes back to Foucault, and these are issues that also interest me very much. About psychoanalysis, the effects of the left in France, 2007. The Return to Rem, an autobiographical account when he goes back to his home. Great. Michel Foucault. Fourth book, another book on Foucault, Return to Rem, again. Reflections on the gay question, society as a verdict. Once again, the gay question, class, warfare, identities, trajectories. 2015, a system on the kind and the struggles of sexual judgment in contemporary society. Vieillesse et mortum femme de peuple. Last essay, 2023, I believe, something regarding feminism. So all good, all cool, but if this person here is the source, the only concrete source that Mr. Nicholas Thorburn states as a concrete demonstration that Deleuze was indeed working on the Grandeur of Karl Marx, I only see a person who is dedicated, justly so, his rights to, in the defense of homosexuals and homosexualities. I say again, 100% on his side. Sexuality, essentially, and Michel Foucault. That's his life's work, no? We don't see here anything about Karl Marx, strange, and absolutely zero about Gilles Deleuze. In fact, I'll go on. He also wrote, sorry I missed this, a dictionary on gay culture and lesbian culture. Another thing on Michel Foucault, etc., etc., etc. Great work, but I'm saying I see no Marx here whatsoever. And no reference anywhere to Deleuze. He may have written one book, maybe I'm getting confused with Allier, in which he reviewed a bunch of philosophers together with Deleuze, but I see nothing here. I'm not criticizing the guy, but what we're going to do from here is get with Didier Eribon. Let's see if we can update this. this whole issue, as we can see in that video, the only proof that is given is that in 1993, Didier Eribon, an expert on Deleuze, and I just wrote his entire opera. There's nothing about Deleuze, but he wrote an article for La Nouvelle Observatoire. Today it has a different name. Why? Because it's been so plagued with scandals and a bunch of famous lawsuits. The most famous one being defamation against Didier Eribon, which we're going to look at very shortly. But we do not. Maybe he was innocent. What do we know? I wasn't there, but we don't want to defame people and discredit them in that way, the same technique that our critics use against us. But we're going to go and take a look at the actual article itself, which was article La Nouvelle Observatoire numéro 52, number 51, way back in 1953. So just give me a second to dig this up, and I think things should get even clearer here. If I can find it, of course. Too many windows open. Oh my goodness. No. Let me see if I can go back to my email account, which has shut me down. I'm gonna download it really quick and then share it on the screen, because we have to look at this. You have to understand where things come from. Otherwise, you're susceptible to all kinds of fuckery. So here we go again. Where do we have it? Je me souviens. So, after this, keep in mind, La Nouvelle Observatoire is kind of sort of like a tabloid, which went into crisis, and then in the 80s, 90s had to reinvent itself because no one was looking at it anymore, and they made this whole appeal to bring in, young people and try and reinvent. It doesn't even exist anymore because of a whole bunch of credibility issues. But let's see if I can screen capture. Okay. What's he asking me for? No. Window capture. That's it right there. Let me move that down. I hope you can see this. I'm not sure if we can zoom into this, can we? Okay, so I'm not going to waste too much time. This is the original article that Mr. Thoburn is citing as definitive proof that Gilles Deleuze's last book was on Karl Marx. And once again, I need to get you a link to this, but I repeat, you guys are much more internet savvy. So if we go back to original timeline, Didier wrote in the Nouvelle Observatoire an article on Deleuze. No, because I have to write that here. Sorry about this, Le Nouveautour, an article, being someone who'd never really written about Deleuze. His entire life was dedicated to Michel Foucault and sexuality and human sexuality. However, for this newspaper, which he worked for 2 decades, wrote an article on Deleuze, and that is Le Nouvel Observatoire number 51. So as I know you guys are totally internet savvy, I will tomorrow or tonight try and put all these links directly in there, because I want everyone to see this and make their own decision. And I'm not going to pass through this entire article, which would be like absolutely dead boring, but if you read through this, and I actually need the second page. Is there a second page here? No. Shit. Hang on, guys. What about here? Is this? I've got the second page here. I'm going to have to share another page. Anyway. Let's look at the first page. So, keep in mind, context. This is not some fucking incredible philosophical authority. This is a newspaper. This is like when you open the New York Times and everyone's like, go read Gwyneth Paltrow's new biography. Okay, this is like a literature section of a tabloid, basically. So, we have, obviously, you need the big title. So, unedited. This is the book section of a newspaper article. When the great philosopher disappeared, pensez à voix haute. It literally means passé en parfait, past perfect, when the great philosopher Gilles Deleuze, who has now disappeared, was thinking with a loud voice. No, je me souviens. I remember myself. So, subtitle, il y a 2 ans, it's 2 years, l'auteur de Mille Plateaux, Gilles Deleuze is the author of Mille Plateaux. Son livre préféré, by his own words, his preferred book, and ding, 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 we should start to have a few warning signs already. This is tabloid journalism. C'était confié à notre collaborateur Didier Ribon. That means that Gilles Deleuze's, in his own words, his best book has been for several years confidently given to our collaborator Didier Ribon. Second alarm bell. Let's just go by dates. This is 1993. When was Mille Plateaux published? 1980. That's a 13-year difference. And the great Didier, who has written nothing on Gilles Deleuze, has been confidently given a copy of Mille Plateaux, which has been published for 13 years. So, once again, this is why sometimes it can be useful to fact check and then you make your own decision in the end, but already there's warning bells everywhere here. In Mille Plateaux, Deleuze is evoking the great intellectual figures. He talks about Jean-Paul Sartre, Canguilhem, Jacques Lacan, and Marx, et aussi les enjeux de son gai travail de philosophie. And at the same time, he also talks about his gay, happy game of working with philosophy. Voici des extraits de ses propos inédits. Here are some unedited extracts from his book. So if this, even Thoburn says it is published, well, I'm not sure. It might be 1993. It might be earlier, but it's definitely after. Hang on, let's be rigorous here. Let's not fuck around. This is Le Nouvel Observateur. Let's not leave anything open here. When did number 51 come out? Le Nouvel Observateur 52. Autorisé. No. Today is called the Nouvel Observateur. Are we sure about the number that's written here is already kind of peculiar? Hang on, where did... Oh, fuck. Hang on, let me dig that up again. I have to go back to my notes. Yeah, well, open it, please. hang on. Let's see if we can be sure on the dates here. I gotta zoom. Is that 51 or 81? How in God's name do I zoom in on this thing? No, this comes from 1993. I've got to share a second paper. This is theoretically Deleuze's interview in 1993. So indeed, I was not mistaken. So once again, explain to me how in 13 years Didier got this incredible, amazing, confidential book published 13 years before in France. Anyway, let me try and switch. I need to go to, what a bloody mess, culture and communication, because this is the second page of the article. And at this point, I'm going to have to discover how I zoom in. Anyway, let's just go back and read this interview, because once again, you guys are going to dig it up. You guys be the judge on everything. I'm just giving out information to make you make a better decision, no? This is like a total mix of things from completely different times. And when you, like, I'm looking now at Plateau, you know, we're jumping like all over time. And if you read another thing we have to understand here is that if you're publishing a newspaper article, you have to, even in those times, you're selling stuff. You have to, you have to condense. You have to say things that aren't necessarily true. And after this, we'll get into the case where Didier Rebon did exactly that. And you're condensing it to make a kind of publicity for the book, because even in those times, your publisher is going to have an agreement with the Nouvel Observateur, etc., etc. So I'm going to take a look right here. Follow my mouse. I know it's hard to read. This is what Deleuze apparently told Didier in 1993 about Plateau. Ce livre est le meilleur de ce que nous avons fait ensemble, Félix et moi. Okay, so Plateau, Deleuze says directly, is the best book that we did together, Félix and me. Et c'est le meilleur de tout ce que j'ai fait. And it's the best book that I've ever done. Oui, je peux dire que c'est sûrement ce que j'ai fait de mieux. Yes, once again, I can surely say that's the best book I've ever written. Ding, 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 ding. Does that sound? That should, if you have an inner sense of intuition, you should know that's kind of a strange answer. But hey, you can believe it, huh? And then get ready for the bells. Ça n'est pas eu de succès. The book was not a success, mais c'était un très beau livre. But it was still a very beautiful book, je crois, I believe. Pourquoi est-ce que cela n'a pas eu de succès? Why was that not a successful book? This is bells. You're going to be hearing them everywhere. Le livre était trop gros, peut-être. Maybe the book was too long. No? So bells should be ringing off everywhere here. And we all know that when people are writing articles for newspapers, they have orders on what they have to write, and they have specific rules they have to write. And we've already seen that Didier has done nothing in his life remotely connected to Gilles Deleuze. So, I honestly, for me, it sounds weird that Deleuze would say, why was this book, Plateau, my best ever book? That already rings bells for me. And why was it such a big disaster? Why was it not successful? Well, maybe it's because it was too long. Does that, for a person that knows a little bit Gilles Deleuze, does that sound like an answer you would give? It's too long. No. It's true that the second phrase, he says, et puis surtout, and maybe above all, l'époque n'y était plus. And maybe because the epoch is over, no? If it's his epoch or the epoch of philosophy or whatever, that's a statement I can accept. But saying that Gilles Deleuze say it wasn't successful because it was too long, you know, we're in the world of journalism here. I invite you all, download this fucker, read it, and tell me, you know, do you really want to believe based on this newspaper article? And so if we go all the way down here, and shit, we can't see that here because this is the famous reference. Let me pull this up. Oh, flute. No, that's my freaking screen. Hang on. This guy. There we go. I'm pulling this all the way up. Now, this is, watch my mouse, this little line here, this thing here, okay, that is where, this is the proof, according to, I'm not saying it's the proof according to Thorburn, because like I said, he's a good guy, he seems to be a good guy, he's doing his thing, maybe he believes, maybe, you know, he needs to publicize a book, and then maybe being that the Deleuze market is so saturated, maybe, you know, you have to try and find something new. So we're going to go back to this issue. But look at this right here. Livre, books. This is the last question in an interview with Deleuze, in which the answers are like, and here we say, look, Gilles Deleuze en 1988, Gilles Deleuze in 1988. Même quand on écrit tout seul, even when he writes all alone, il y a collaboration qui se manifeste. There's always a collaboration which manifests itself. Okay. Tellement de gens, I can't even read it, parlent en chacun de nous. So many people speak in each one of us. Disait-il, he said, en 1913, in 1993, to Didier Eribon. And in this 1993, in this one line, according to Didier Eribon, Deleuze told him, my next book, and it will be my last, will be called The Grandeur of Marx. So, let's go to the absolute last question, even more interesting. And once again, if this is an interview with Gilles Deleuze, who's written a wonderful, wonderful book on Francis Bacon, and who's very distinctly said that he is a philosopher. And what is philosophy? Science, art, philosophy, no? So this is the question by our buddy Didier about painting. He says, Gilles, apparently in 1993, what do you think about painting? And Deleuze answers, aujourd'hui, today, je n'ai plus envie d'écrire. So this is 1993, when, and we'll get into this further on, when he had supposedly, according to others, above all Tony Negri, already written the first chapter of the Grandeur of Marx. But in 1993, in that same year, he says he has no more desire to write. But if we go back to a timeline, which I've obviously lost here, Deleuze in 1995 finishes Immanence a Life, no? So let's just think logically. I mean, I shouldn't have to say anything, no? This should be like completely perfectly logical. Immanence a Life, that's not a small essay like Grandeur of Yasser Arafat, in which is 20 pages. it's not a tome of 300 pages either, but that is a substantial work. And so you have 2 years in which he's in horrific physical shape, and apparently, according to these people, he's writing about Marx, but we have nothing to say about Marx other than citing this article in Toni Negri. However, miraculously, Immanence Life is written just very briefly before his death. And it gets even better. Let's look at the very last line. Peindre, painting. We already read this part. Aujourd'hui, je n'ai plus envie d'écrire. Today, I have no desire to write anymore. Après mon livre sur Marx, after my book on Marx, je crois que j'envisagerai d'arrêter d'écrire. After my book on Marx, I believe that I have a vision of ceasing with writing. À ce moment-là, at that moment there, je me mettrai à peindre. At that moment there, I am going to start to paint. Once again, you be the judge, huh? But my point here is, everyone has to decide for themselves. But to me, I sincerely doubt this article is being, but it happens all the time. I mean, movie reviews, book reviews, the person that's doing it is just, it's clear he's chopping things up, making things more commercial, simplifying things. The author has written nothing in his life on Deleuze, so once again, you can go to the other side and make an argument and say, yeah, maybe, Deleuze, even though he was hooked up to a breathing machine and had severe tuberculosis and was dying from lung cancer, and the pain was so great already at that time, in a state of complete depression after having lost Pierre-Félix Guattari. You want to make the argument that he's going to write a book on Marx and then dedicate himself to painting? Watercolors, I hope attached to that machine, once again, these are arguments that I truly believe that make your own decisions, but be skeptical. Don't believe everything they're trying to sell you. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm just saying, make your own decisions, but read into, let me shut this down, the context. Sorry, understand where and from whom, above all, things are coming from. But then if you come along, once again, my huge problem here is, why do you have to ride the back of Deleuze in order to, if you're so interested in Karl Marx, do something on your own on Karl Marx. You don't need to jump on the back of Deleuze. This is a tendency of today. Everything has to jump on something that's already been there because you think that's kind of a guarantee that I will be accepted, that I will earn money, etc., etc. No, do your own thing, buddy. But once again, Thoburn, it's hard. Don't want to attack him. He even admits himself that this whole thing, is very nebulous, and who knows, and maybe Deleuze lost faith in the whole project. But what my point is, do research very well where your information is coming from, because not everyone is so good out there. They're not out to help you, huh? On the contrary, like Deleuze, most of his life, like any artist, most people will be able to kill you if you're doing something different and interesting, no? And so why should we just sit here and accept all of these things that people are saying? Research it as best as you can. And on that note, let's shut that down and go into a quick case. And there are many of these, but I don't have all the time. But we're going to talk about the case of Didier Eribon and the publishings he did on Bourdieu. If, as always, I can open up anything coherent. Let's close this. So, first off, and here the goal is not to mine the credibility of the author, but to show precedents which clearly demonstrate that journalism is very different from literature or philosophy or writing about. It's another thing. So if you're citing a source from like a newspaper in 1993, then good luck to you, man. Have fun with it. But right now, what I'm going to try and get up and running is one of many cases. Oh, flute. Hang on, I've already lost it. That's so typical. Guys, be patient with me. Pierre Bourdieu. Allez-y. Hop. Pierre Bourdieu, a sociologist, born in 1930, considered to be one of the most important sociological writers of the second half of the 20th century. Born in 1930, his sociological works revolve around mechanism of reproduction of social hierarchies. So, in itself, biography, Pierre Bourdieu was a very respected sociologist that wrote many books. I'm not too familiar with him, but he has a massive opera starting from the 1960s. Reproduction, Leçons pratiques, questions of sociology, Homo Academius, masculine domination, the rules of art, the genesis and structure of the literary field, La Misère du Monde, and the books go on and on up until a posthumous work, I believe, published in 2022. He died, no, sorry, that's posthumous. He died in 2002 in Paris. And what we want to show you right now, and once again, we're talking about that article. If, of course, obviously we are intellectually lazy, but look at the years: 1995, the publication of Immanence; 1993, hearsay that a chapter is already done, but 1993, the article on Deleuze. So let's keep, then we have obviously 2024, Thoburn with his book, his discourse on the Grandeur of Marx. Ali will leave reasonably peripheral, but when we get into that, things should be even clearer. So what I need to do is share this, because we need to understand where things come from. And we will not accept and believe everything we see on YouTube every day. So here we go. Let me see if I can make that visible. Obviously I'm not doing a good job. Obviously I'm messing up my windows everywhere. Let's see if I can fix this. Okay. The Nouvelle Observatoire. Why can't we see that? I'm going to bring him up a level. I'm going to turn him. There we go. Okay, so once again, we are putting on our Sherlock Holmes hats, but that's just a joke. I mean, we have to check into facts before deciding what to believe. So, this is 2022. La Nouvelle Observateur est-il obscene? Is the newspaper, the Nouvelle Observateur, obscene? La publication pour le Nouvel Observateur d'un texte on est dit de Pierre Bourdieu ayant suscité la réaction légitime de sa famille. On pouvait croire que le nouvel observateur et son professeur de déontologie, Laurent Geoffrin, donneraient aux proches de Pierre Bourdieu l'occasion de s'expliquer. Ils n'ont rien. Jean Daniel a refusé de laisser paraître un texte sous prétexte qu'on constituait une atteinte à l'honneur de nouvel observateur. Okay, so we're saying with the death of Pierre Bourdieu, as we just saw, a well-known sociologist in 2002, same year of his death, published a big article about him. However, his family openly protested the publishing of that article. And obviously, we're in France here. Bros, the Nouvel Observateur by Geoffrin said that that was an offense to their honor as a newspaper. So, oh Lord, let's dig a little bit further. And guess who? And I won't publish the article. You guys look into this. Easy to dig up on Google. The Nouvel Observateur lost this case in a court of law and had to pay a massive fine. And if we look at this, le Nouvel Observateur a publié le 31 janvier un dossier consacré à Pierre Bourdieu, dont lequel figurait sous le titre Pierre par Bourdieu, un texte inédit de sociologue. So that means on the 31st of January, the Nouvel Observateur published an article consecrated or dedicated to Pierre Bourdieu, in which they called it Pierre par Bourdieu, an unedited text on the sociologue. La famille Bourdieu s'est émouée de découvrir dans notre numéro ces extraits d'un livre à apparaître. Nous sommes désolés de cet impair et nous la prions d'accepter nos excuses. So, once again, the Bourdieu family said they discovered in notre numéro. Haha, this is really interesting, but in the meantime, who wrote the article here? Didier Haribon. Oops. And so, and this is not the only case, there have been many cases of our friendly Mr. Didier Haribon writing things which perhaps were not factually correct. Let's see if I can dig that up again. Obviously, I've already lost it. Let's close some of these stupid windows. My God, I've already lost it. Unless, wow, no, it's, no, Karen is open. Let's see if I can dig that up again. There we go. Yeah, thank you very much. No, because there's a phrase I want to be very careful about translating. It's a very long article, but this is what we want to translate very well. And you guys can watch this in real time, so you can also trust my translations. The Bourdieu family was moved to discover these extracts from a forthcoming book in issue. We are sorry for this blunder, and we asked to accept our apologies. So once again, let's see if I can dig that up. Et c'est la poursuite mise en cause de Didier Eribon. Il faut aussi connaître la vérité des faits pour les juger. Didier Eribon nous assurait de publier des extraits d'un texte autobiographique de Bordeaux portant sur son enfance et qui livrait des clés pour compréhension de personnages. À la lecture de textes émouvants et beaux, nous avons décidé de lui consacrer une double page dans l'intention de faire comprendre à nos lecteurs autant que possible qui était vraiment Pierre Baudou et en quoi ses engagements reflétaient aussi un itinéraire personnel à la fois difficile et courageux. Notre erreur était our error, this is the newspaper, was to suppose that the proposal by Didier Eribon that he was implicitly agreed with the family of Pierre Bourdeau. Ce n'était pas le cas. That was not the case. So Didier Eribon essentially, somehow, who knows who had some kind of autobiography for Bourdieu, but never asked the permission of the family. This is all a defense of the... Presque tous les articles, à commencer par celui de Didier Eribon, donnaient une image extrêmement positive. They say everything that he wrote was very positive. And then here's Didier Eribon's defense. He explains the reasons for why he believed he was authorized to publish an unedited text because we're in 2002. Once again, look at the dates. He said, I knew Pierre Bourdeau in 1979. When I did an interview with him in a journal called The Distinction, La Distinction. From this moment until his death, we were tied by personal, intellectual, and political complicity. Didier Eribon admits himself that he went way beyond his rights because Le Monde, a much bigger, more serious newspaper, obviously wrote articles criticizing this. He went way beyond his rights, legal rights, and etc., etc., etc. So, obviously, the guy got sued to pieces, so he's defending himself, and also sued principally by the family, etc., etc. So, once again, and with the Nouvelle Observatoire and also with Didier, we can dig up other cases, and I think you should see, beyond any doubt that at least in itself, kind of the so-called facts here are pretty dubious, and that's why once again, Allier, I'm not going to get into Allier tonight. Allier, what we do know is a respected philosopher. We do know that he studied under Félix Guattari, and his first book that he published was about Tony Negri, and then we go back to the whole Tony Negri issue, who I would think is kind of the last man standing in this whole kind of thing. And once again, I'm just going to not waste your time going through it. I've done it a million times. I've expressed my opinion, which may be right or may be wrong, but I have published before, and I'm going to do it again and just guide you to an article and I will put the links up, but this should be pretty easy to pick up on the greatness of Marx. And this is kind of a very well done article. I don't know how old, but I recommend, if you're interested in the subject, to go and read this. This is kind of a history about someone kind of not so different from Thoburn, asking himself the same thing: is this credible? Is it not credible? In the end, I repeat, everyone will have to make his own decision here, but here we go. The second reference is provided by Deleuze himself in an interview with Didier Eribon for the Nouvel Observateur, published in 1995 but conducted in 1903. But once again, go back to that article. For 2 years, Didier has been given this incredibly top secret thing called Mille Plateau, published 13 fucking years before, and therefore look at all these revelations. Go and read that text, and nothing makes sense. It's a scramble. It's a total scramble of shit. And go and look at the biography of Didier Ribon, which respect for his work on Foucault and everything else, but there's nothing that has anything to do with Gilles Deleuze. Journalism, we should know by now. How much do you believe journalists in 2024? That's always been the case. There was more integrity in the past, but we should already have warning signs when we're basing like our facts on tabloids, essentially, especially tabloids like the Nouvel Observateur, which has always been in crisis and is always trying to pick up young people, and you can't. You have to be biased. You have to slant things. You have to follow the trends. Otherwise, you're not going to make money. So here we have that fact. We cite the proof as Didier Ribon for Le Nouvel Observateur in 1995, published in 1995, but conducted in 1993. The Grandeur of Marx. We all knew this. And then you get into really interesting and crazy, complicated stuff concerning. Here's Tony. Here's our man. And once again, this is all Mike. Could it be possible? Is it possible? Is it Mike possible? Quite. And at a certain point, it's just kind of like, do I believe in the Immaculate Conception? Possibly, yeah, sure. Why not? But we have Jean-Claude Martin. But read the article yourself. I don't find it interesting, specifically relevant. I just wanted to get to all these claims by Tony Negri, which I've gone over, but here, this bro here is much more serious than me. And because I wanted to get in, and he talks about it, the context of and the relationship between Deleuze and Garty. He even mentions Thoburn in this Deleuze, Marx, and politics. But I wanted to go back to the timeline here, and I think it's around here. Let me see. And some of the stuff I would describe as being naive in this article, especially regarding the relationship between Negri and Deleuze. Because you'd also, I think Deleuze wrote a small essay on Carmelo Bene, but was Deleuze like a great personal friend all of his life with Carmelo Bene? No, absolutely not. But Deleuze was interested in these people and kindly wrote articles because with Carmelo Bene in theater in Italy, and Negri, clearly Guattari had a much stronger relation, was much more interested in Tony Negri, but this is the part I want to get to, because Post-Deleuze, post-prison, Tony Negri starts to write together the famous books about the multitude. And I think this is also a place where alarm bells should be going off everywhere. So let's see if it's this. This brings us to the matter at hand. In 1997, okay, 2 years after the death of Deleuze, after arranging a plea bargain with the Italian government, so Tony Negri before was arrested, and he was a member of the Italian government, and he famously fled to France as a fugitive, and in 1997 made a plea bargain with the Italian government, and he returned to Italy to serve out his sentence and was released in 2003. In the days leading up to his return in 1997, he participated in a video interview called Retour vers le futur, a return to the future. This site will give you a link to the full PDF. And this was transcribed and translated into English in 1998, a year after, by Michael Hart, his future collaborator on Empire and other works, and with whom he'd already written Labor of Dionysus, a critique of the state form in 1994. So we all know while in prison, Negri would go on to write a book with Pierre Félix Guattari called Communists Like Us, or New Lines of Alliance and New Spaces of Liberty. But what does Negri say in this video interview? Let me quote this passage in full just for clarity's sake. And it's not even this, which is specifically... Shame on me. This is the part right here. Negri made this claim, as stated earlier, in a video interview recorded in the days leading up to his return to Italy on July 1, 1997, to serve out his sentence. Just a few days prior, on June 28, 1997, he gave an interview to the German newspaper Die Tagesschau. Sorry, I'm not good in German. In it, we find none of the kind of conceptual vocabulary Negri would later develop in his work, especially with Michael Hart. No mentions of Empire, the book being published 3 years later in 2000. Published 3 years later, that means written years earlier. No mention of multitude and so on. As far as I can tell, it was in 1994 with his first work with Michael Hart that a conceptual vocabulary of multitude and so on first appears, and clearly a few days later he felt content not to even reference these concepts in perhaps his final interview before prison. It therefore seems unlikely to me that he felt the same attachment to these terms as he later did in 2000 with Empire, and it would be surprising if he therefore engaged in such a radical process of conceptual translation here. So, Negri made these claims about Grandeur of Marx well over 2 years before Empire, probably in late 1996 or 1997. I should add the calendar here, but as we know, I'm a lazy pro-Russian intellectual who even worse watches Joe Rogan. So I'm not going to do that. You guys help me out and do that. But in 1996 or 1977, Negri makes his first mentions of the Grandeur of Marx, which in theory were published first in an article by Didier Eribon in 1995, even if the interview came from 1993. And so we would have, and I'm not going to do it. If you're interested, give it a shot. But this kind of Sherlock detective work with Tony, we have to look up dates and in his big books, where he sure made a big bag, no doubt, with his idea multitude. People were jumping up and down about that. But in this article will simply say that Tony was just taking multiplicity from Deleuze and trying to find a new word to, do something original on his own. And then, yes, it is true that Tony wrote about Spinoza, but I'll say name, Martial Guerrou. Anyone know who that is? That's one of Deleuze's teachers on Spinoza. That's a dude who was in the First World War and studied his whole life on Spinoza. So Negri's works on Spinoza, that's not his job. He's not a philosopher, no? So it's like Spinoza, we read, his book, and therefore the multitude is, the unity of bodies who, okay, but it's not serious scholarship. So you'd have to look also at the same time on how Negri is changing, his terminology and the whole time frame when he's talking about the Grandeur of Marx, which was 96 or 97. So as I read here, then it is possible that Negri had translated some of Deleuze's ideas into his own conceptual vocabulary. This article, I think this is naive. Deleuze and Negri were both fundamentally Spinozists. The Savage Anomaly, that's the book by Tony Negri. So obviously that's something that both of them had in common. And anyways, I don't want to waste any more time here than possible. But this whole article, which is excellently researched, and I think more or less along the lines of that video of Thoburn, okay, but we are it might incredibly be possible or plausible that Tony Negri sustained that he was in intimate contact with Deleuze from 1993, and he was kept current on the writings of the Grandeur of Marx, where Deleuze had mentioned to Negri that he had finished the chapter. So therefore it is entirely plausible that Tony, if you read, no offense, Tony Negri is just questionable. He did have quite a wild life. He may or may not have been responsible for terrorist attacks in which innocents died. We don't know that. Only he knows. And he did return to serve his sentence. He did escape. He did write an interesting book on Spinoza. But if the heart and Negri books on the multitudes were generally kind of discredited as just being, this incredibly simplified form of Deleuzian terms and quite naive, no? We, the multitude, will overcome. And things simply, aren't that easy. But anyway, we would have to get into this whole long, complicated issue of Negri. Did he understand? Did he not understand? Look at the dates where he's saying certain things, and I'm just saying, I'm giving you evidence. In my opinion, I've always been open about it. I don't buy into this, but I repeat, I want to share to you what I know. I have watched that entire 1 hour video on the opposite point of view, which does not convince me because I don't find anything, no factual basis for it, but and I'm not even sure of the value of going into this too much at this point. I mean, nothing's ever going to be concretely proved, I believe, unless a miraculous first chapter pops out of, somewhere, and then we have concrete proof, at which point I will bow down and, like I said, go live in the Patagonian Islands and finally be happy. Otherwise, I can't. It's going to be a question of faith, and that's also Thoburn's point. No, he's saying it's a fabulation. No, he's saying there's almost like in terms of Zizek, it's almost a fetish. No, it's maybe it's just a missing kind of. For Marxists, obviously maybe it's this fetish, this thing that really doesn't exist, but it's this forbidden object, and we will chase it like we will chase all of our fetishes. I will chase Wanda in furs as Venus all the way up until the end. But she doesn't exist. She's a fetish. So there's that whole aspect too, and that's fine. That's good. No problem about it. Maybe I'm more like I'm always been very interested in Marx, maybe with Deleuze, I believe, and it's just a belief that immanence is something for me that is even more radical, revolutionary, etc., etc. But I repeat, I'm gonna shut this down. I hope I've given a little bit of evidence, which, as usual, may or not be helpful. Next time around, we're just gonna do some basic cleanup work on this, because I did see if I can shut. Because last time we looked through Isabelle Garot, and then her conclusion that in the works, at least of Gilles Deleuze, that the Marx has always remained peripheral. However, we're going to look into Anne Savarnagne, and then look into her thesis, which is consistent that yes, she does agree, but however, Deleuze-Guattari, obviously Marx does assume more of an important role. So in the end, there's no one's going to be right, no one's going to be wrong. Insults and bullets are going to fly, but in the end, what's important, at least from my point of view, is that you do the fact checking, you decide what you're going to believe. But I'm just saying, as always, don't be naive. Don't be careful out there. Make your own decisions, but make informed decisions. So, guys, I am signing off. A pleasure as always. I hope to have been some use, and hope to see you all next time. And have a lovely week. Take care. Bye bye. Au revoir et à bientôt.